Police chiefs have warned of more disorder linked to the far right in the coming days after a wave of violence swept through towns and cities yesterday. Meanwhile, church services will be held in Southport later to remember the 3 girls killed in a knife attack almost a week ago. Police have warned that more violent protests are expected across the UK in the coming days. Around 90 people were arrested yesterday after a day of violence. Police bosses say 4,000 extra officers are ready to respond to further disorder after groups clashed with police in Liverpool, Hull, Stoke-on-Trent, Bristol, Manchester, Leeds and Belfast. Here's our reporter, Greg Mackenzie.
Tensions had been building all week and yesterday saw an escalation of the violence and unrest linked to far-right groups across England and Northern Ireland. Police forces stretched to their limits, fighting running battles like this in Liverpool overnight. The scene of some of the worst violence, which turned into reported looting late in the evening. A number of officers were injured, with the mayhem spilling out into the city's main shopping areas. There were reports of youths throwing fireworks at the police. In a statement, Merseyside Police said, "The people who have brought such aggression and destruction into the heart of our communities do not represent the people of Merseyside. This is disgraceful and we will not tolerate it." The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, said the police have the government's full support to take action against extremists attempting to sow hate. The Home Secretary has also warned that anyone engaging in unacceptable disorder will pay the price.
Well, criminal violence and disorder has no place on Britain's streets. We've been clear to the police that they have our full backing in taking the strongest possible action against perpetrators, including we're making sure that there are more prosecutors, there are sufficient prison places, and also that the courts stand ready, because anyone who engages in this kind of disorder needs to be clear that they will pay the price.
Families expecting a trip to the beach in Blackpool were met with these scenes. People shouting Islamophobic and anti-immigration chants, chairs, bottles and planks of wood being thrown around with more than 20 arrests. A dispersal notice was authorised across Manchester city centre in order to assist police in dealing with protests, according to Greater Manchester Police. In Hull, Humberside Police said officers suffered injuries after a group of people targeted a hotel which houses asylum seekers, smashing windows in. And anti-fascist protesters were kept apart from far-right groups by police in Leeds after they began hurling insults at each other. In Bristol, these scenes were replicated, with the police bearing the brunt.
We will stand together!
And in Belfast, clashes with anti-immigration and anti-racism protesters faced off in tense scenes outside the City Hall, while police in riot gear were deployed. Not all demonstrations held across the UK descended into violence, and in many places protesters dispersed by the evening. But with fears of more protests today, there are worries that more shocking images like this treatment of a police motorbike rider could emerge. Greg Mackenzie, BBC News.
Well, tensions have escalated since the killing of 3 young girls in Southport last Monday, when false rumours spread that the suspect was an asylum seeker. Let's talk now to our reporter Sarah Rogers, who's in Southport for us. And Sarah, morning to you. There will be a memorial service later, won't there? But I wonder how the community there is coping nearly 1 week on.
Well, the scenes here where I am now, very different, aren't they, to the scenes of violence up and down the country. This area here is for tributes which have been refreshed and kept beautiful, like you say, almost a week on since those girls were killed at a Taylor Swift dance class. How does anybody get their head around that? Now, these tributes, we have images of those girls who are B.B. King, Elsie Stankham and Alice De Silva Aguirre. And today in the city, in the town, there will be a special memorial service for them with pink ribbons in their memory.
OK, Sarah, for now, thank you. Well, the Prime Minister says there is no excuse for the violence that has been taking place across England and Northern Ireland. Sir Keir Starmer said the police had his full support to tackle what he called extremists attempting to sow hate. Here's our political correspondent, Hannah Miller.
Yeah, the sense from government is that protest, freedom of expression, those things are fine, but violent disorder is not, and some of the scenes that we've seen clearly pass that threshold. A group of senior ministers have met this weekend to discuss what to do about it all. The Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, Home Secretary and Justice Secretary. And in the aftermath of that meeting, Keir Starmer said that the police have their full support to take action against what he called extremists who are attacking police officers, disrupting local businesses and attempting to sow hate by intimidating communities. They have been trying to get ahead of all of this for several days now, bringing together police forces on Thursday, encouraging them to share intelligence, talking about using facial recognition to stop perpetrators from travelling around the country. They've also brought in extra prosecutors this weekend, the idea being that if people can see that some people are being charged for these offences, that might make them think twice about whether to go out and commit violent offences on the streets. So the language that we're hearing from government is really quite tough, but there's clearly still quite a lot of work to do to stop this violence from spreading and also to ensure that people who've been targeted feel safe.
Take a look at what's on the front of today's newspapers, and starting with The Observer, it says that ministers want rioters to pay the price for the violence that is seen across the country over the last few days. The paper has called it the worst outbreak of civil disorder in Britain for more than a decade. It means that the courts could well sit for 24 hours to help fast-track the sentencing of those responsible. The Sunday Telegraph suggests the Ministry of Justice is now in discussions with the judiciary about keeping magistrates' courts open all night to help deal with that unexpected surge in the number of people currently in custody.